Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Is it on? Now it is, yes. Will you please join me in an attitude of prayer? Settle our spirits, O Lord, and give us peace. We come to this new academic year full of excitement for new opportunities, yet perhaps a bit apprehensive about what lies ahead. Let us be gentle with ourselves and with one another. As we look forward to the new friends, new ideas, new experiences and concepts, we're not sure what sacrifices we may be called to make as our lives change in the days and weeks ahead. Soothe us, O Lord, set our paths straight in this broken world. Remind us that we are the agents of change, and we are the ones who are the courageous leaders on this campus and in our communities. Let justice always be present in our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. As we foster justice, instill in us kindness of spirit and compassion. And in all that we say and do, let us reclaim our joy. Amen. Will you remain standing and reach for your blue hymnals and turn, or red hymnals, sorry. Some are blue, blue or red. And turn to number 139 and let us sing together, Praise to the Lord the Almighty. Please stand.
was pretty good. One more time. Good morning. Good morning. Nicely done. I am so pleased to welcome our students, our faculty and staff, our Board of Trustees members, and honored guests to the 2024 President's Convocation. We convene at this event to officially begin the academic year, to welcome our new students, and to engage with important ideas. I had a preview of the President's topic, and it's going to be good, so get ready. No pressure, President Holloman. Besides welcoming our new students, we recognize and celebrate the commitment they have made to Centenary's Honor Code by recently signing the Honor Code book. Centenary's Honor Court is comprised of student members and advised by faculty. If you are a student member or a faculty advisor of the Honor Court, please stand and be recognized for your important work. This year's Honor Court is led by Chief Justice Mr. Ali Riza Musavi Bebehani, who presents the Honor Code book today. If you are a first-year student and you signed this book, please stand. I am very pleased to accept this book and to acknowledge your commitment to integrity and honor. Thank you.
Where the emerald stream and the evening shake, and meditate on the words he's made. Great God, our sovereign Lord. Join us now, the meadow is green, and the waters pure, and the woods serene, and the flowing air is fresh and clean, where God his blessings pour. Feel the wind come down, feel the whistle come down, hear the whistle come down, and the blessings go. And the sun comes up, in witness to his love. Hear now, ye sons of men, for danger lurks in this great garden. The Lord will visit once again to see what we have done. As God is the shepherd and we are the sheep, we are Mother Earth must keep, maintain the air, protect the deep. At judgment day he'll come. See the Lord come down. 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 Remember all his power. See the Lord come down. See the Lord come down. His Lord come down. See the Lord come down. You will regret that hour. So now, my people, beware. You're in charge of the seas and the earth and the air. You'd better take extraordinary care of the earth, our only home. All glory be to God on high. Shout praises loudly to the sky. Listen to the earth and hear her cry. And in heaven,
Last Friday, our faculty and academic affairs staff participated in a professional institute. One of the sessions was led by our own Dr. Amanda Donahoe, Associate Professor of Political Science. been thinking a lot about a phrase she used during her presentation, and I want to share it with you today. In the context of her presentation, she encouraged participants to consider, and I quote, behaviors worth modeling. Some of the behaviors she suggested included listening to understand, engaging in civil dialogue, and working toward common understanding. You will find that Centenary's president, Christopher L. Holloman, models many of these exceptional behaviors, as well as others central to Centenary's mission and to the liberal arts, like thinking critically, thinking reflectively, and importantly, thinking for oneself. President Holloman is a scholar, a mentor, a teacher, a partner, a parent, and a dedicated fan of every kind of centenary performance and competition. As you listen to President Holloman today, and you encounter him throughout this year, let his words and his actions inspire your thinking and your behavior. Our 31st President, Christopher L. Holloman.
Thank you, Dr. Soul. Welcome to Centenary's President's Convocation. Welcome especially to our freshmen, but also to our faculty and staff. We have 3 members of our Board of Trustees. In chatting with students, I have realized that they don't always understand the role of the board. They're not involved in the day-to-day administration of the college, but they make sure we're sort of headed in the right direction, and they're my bosses, especially the chairman of the board's here with us, Mr. Archer Frierson, so welcome to the trustees. Welcome to all of you to this wonderful space. I love Brown Chapel. I love the organ. Thank you, Dr. Watson. She knows I love to hear the organ roar, so got that going. Thanks to the choir. Beautiful as always. Sorry I didn't get out to Camp Bethany this year, but I think Dr. Hobson may disagree. It sounds to me like you're ahead of schedule for the year, so hopefully that is true. Convocations have a long history. They go back to at least the 1500s, used for all sorts of gatherings, but most often what we're doing here, marking the beginning of a new academic year and welcoming you into a community that has learning as its highest value and its prime goal. We have 3 convocations every year: the President's Convocation that you're at, Founders Day, marking a time to look back to our founding, where we are now, and forward into the future. And then, of course, our Honors Convocation, which celebrates the achievements in academics and student life, the things that we are all about as our primary role. So this is the last, or at least the last, official event of orientation. I hope for our first-year students you've been made to feel welcomed and excited, not too overwhelmed yet, about the years to come at Centenary. But more than some years, I think, my comments today are directed at all of us and will resonate with themes that you have heard me talk about in various fora over the last couple of weeks, whether it's been our college-wide meeting that we had for faculty and staff last Thursday, the little mini convocation we had at the end of move-in day where your parents said goodbye. Hopefully some of the things you've heard me talk about will come back to mind. For our faculty and staff, of course, they hear me in this opportunity a lot every year, and so I know they'll hear some things they've heard before, but I don't really apologize for that because the same themes keep coming back, as a phrase attributed to Mark Twain, not really by him, of course, but history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I want to start with a little vocabulary lesson. There's a word I like a lot. You might know it. The word is liminal. 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 Doesn't have anything to do with lemons or limbs. Doesn't have anything to do with lemons even, although there's probably some deep connection there. Liminal is a fairly new word as words go. It first was used apparently around in the mid-1800s. Didn't really come into wide use until the last 20 or 30 years. It means of or pertaining to a threshold, the space between rooms, a threshold. When liminal first appeared, it was about physical stimuli. It was that point just before the very softest thing that you can hear, or the very lightest thing that your touch can perceive. You might be familiar with more familiar with the word subliminal, which is the same word, under the detection, or subliminal are things that come into our brain or our memory but we don't even notice it because they're below the ability to sense. Its meaning is extended now. It describes a state or place or condition of transition, of being not one place or the other. It's a pretty common, even though it's a new word, it's a pretty common concept because people have been writing about it forever because it's a useful descriptor. Think about it. You know how important some of these spaces are. That time when you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake. And maybe interesting ideas come to you, and then next morning, if you're like me, you wake up next morning and you can't remember them. The photographers refer to the golden hour, the time when the sun is not direct, but it hasn't gotten to dusk yet. These in-between times. There's even a poem, shout out to my English faculty, an old poem by A.A. Milne, who wrote the Winnie the Pooh stories, and he has a childhood poem called Halfway Down. Halfway down the stairs is a stair where I sit. There isn't any other stair quite like it. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. So this is the stair where I always stop. Halfway up the stairs isn't up and it isn't down. It isn't in the nursery, it isn't in the town. All sorts of funny things run around my head. It isn't really anywhere. It's somewhere else instead. These liminal places. Today I want to spend some time thinking about one particular type of liminal space that has come to be known as third places. Ray Oldenburg, an American sociologist, created this term for places that were outside the home. Not at home, that's your first place. They're not at work, the second place. And it's places where people go to converse, connect with their community. It's a casual environment. Nobody's obligated to be there. Hopefully, cost is not an obstacle to people from being in these third spaces, third places. It's where people can interact with members of their own community, but also other people, turn strangers into friends. At a third place, you might run into and hang out with your friends. You might run into people who aren't friends, but they're acquaintances. You might run into somebody wholly new. It's a place to build relationships outside of home or work. It really is. I'm not lying. So it's probably not surprising to you that coffee shops are some of the most common third places. Not just in the United States, around the world. The coffee houses of Vienna are a famous incubation spot for both artistic and scientific ideas in the past. The tea houses in China, where huge extended families come and gather and have dim sum, and old men bring their bird cages out, at least that's the story, and hang their birds and talk with each other all morning. Starbucks actually has, and I guess still has this as an intentional part of their business plan, to become a third place. That's why they don't kick you out, at least in theory, they don't kick you out when you hang out there. For Americans, third places are places that we can affirm our own identities and build empathy for identities different from our own. We are a multilingual, multicultural country. It's important that we have times and places where we can come together with other people who share our racial identity, our ethnic identity, religious, sexual, gender identities. Where can we hang out with people like us? It's incredibly affirming to find people who have identities similar to our own so that we can share experiences and support each other. But at the same time, third places allow for a space to meet entirely new people from other cultures, different from us, other experiences. That encourages us as we share these experiences to identify with each other. It creates community, it creates solidarity, even if we don't share one of these identities. Third places make us understand we belong to something bigger than ourselves. Third places are a part of the American media, the American legend that we tell ourselves. If you're really old, like some of us, we remember the sitcom Cheers, where the theme song to Cheers was a place where everybody knows your name. You can take a break from all your worries. Now, I have bad news and good news. I have a caution and I have a request. The bad news is that third places are getting harder to find for many different reasons, both structural kinds of reasons as well as behavioral reasons. Even though third places are such an important part of our culture, they become more difficult as we continue to become more and more of a car culture. Cities and towns don't have public transportation to libraries or parks in the way that perhaps, and they're certainly not walkable in the way that they were. Our coffee shops even have become isolated from our residential areas. When third places aren't within walking distance, cars become a necessity to get there, and so you are automatically limiting your ability to venture out into a third place. These challenges, along of course with the COVID pandemic and the possibilities of online connection through social media, make it tempting to stay home rather than go out for social interaction. So there is this behavioral component as well. If we think back to some perhaps at least semi-mythical period in the past, you did have corner pubs. I went to graduate school in Chicago, and I can guarantee you that in the older neighborhoods of Chicago, they really are there. There's a little pub on the corner, and you could just wander down there and have a chance to meet with your friends and your neighbor. VFW halls, Veterans of Foreign Wars or other veterans. I think some of this has gotten a little bit forgotten. We don't remember the scale of participation, thanks to the draft, in our largest wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam. And although certainly prior to the Korean War, the armies were segregated, apart from that division, this is a time where blue and white collar workers, men mostly of all, but also importantly women, came together and they fought. And when they came home, they gathered at these places, these VFW halls, radically different, but they had the shared experience of being in the military. That's gone. Churches, they're still there, of course, but we all know church attendance is down. Many of you have heard me talk at some point in the past. One of the towering achievements of social science in the last 30 years or so is a book called Bowling Alone by a sociologist, political scientist named Robert Putnam, who saw the data and said that people were bowling more people were bowling, but league bowling was way down. And that's just an anecdote to support this idea that we are isolated from each other. We don't go to bowling leagues. We don't go to church. We don't go to the VFW. We're losing our social capital. And this is self-reinforcing, right? Because if there are no third places, then you spend more time at home. This causes individualistic rather than community-based mindsets. We don't feel connected to our communities. We don't feel connected to each other. We feel isolated because we are isolated. These challenges make third places all the more important. We can change some of these, and there have been great experiments of building walking communities. But we have to work harder to stay connected with the community beyond our immediate circles, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Third places are integral to forging these relationships. So that's the bad news. The good news, of course, is that all of Centenary and all of your time here is a third place. That's what we are. You're not in high school anymore. You're not, most of you are working, I realize that, but you're not in a full-time job for the most part. You're not in the structured environment of your home, but you're not completely out on your own either. This is, at our core, this is a time and place for you to explore new ideas, new people, new experiences. Most of you I saw, you took advantage of that in Paris. You tried some food you hadn't tried. Some of it you liked, some of it you didn't. That's okay. That's part of trying new things. There's even better news. You have companions on this journey. Again, my faculty and staff have heard me say frequently, I'm a big fan of pilgrimages. I talk about pilgrimages a lot. Pilgrimages are themselves liminal times. You're not on vacation, but you are traveling for a purpose. Pilgrimages are part of virtually every world religious expectation or experience. And they're places where you meet people that you wouldn't otherwise have. That's one of the things that makes the Canterbury Tales a fun thing to read, because it's about people, they're pilgrims on their way to where? Guess where? Canterbury. And they are different from one another. And we hear their stories. You might be familiar with a movie, a powerful movie, The Way. Came out in 2010. They're making a sequel or a semi-remake now. And it's about Martin Sheen, I think this is a spoiler alert, sorry about that. His son dies really early in the movie. And he decides to take up this pilgrimage. There's a pilgrimage, and it actually has routes all throughout Europe, and they all siphon down to a route that goes along the top of Spain to a famous cathedral where the remains, I think, of St. James are kept. And these pilgrims on the Camino come together, and Martin Sheen is expecting to hike this by himself in memory of his son, and he gets caught up with the other pilgrims. And it's mostly a comedy because people are kind of wacky, the way people are in movies. But they're from all over the world, and that's pilgrimages, these interstitial, these liminal moments where we're with people we don't know, but we have some sort of shared purpose that has drawn us together. So here we are, friends. This is great news. You're in this unusual and very special time and place with people that are doing the same thing, and with this amazing set of tour guides to take you on this pilgrimage. So that's the good news, the bad news, the good news, and now the caution, the request. It comes with a but. There's always a but. But you have to make an effort. That's the caution. We live in our own echo chambers. Political scientists have documented what's sometimes called the great sort. We live near people like us. We only talk to people that think the same way as us. We only get our news, most importantly, we only get our news from sources that we agree with. Yeah, sometimes we'll flip over, let's see what they're saying over there on Fox, or let's see what they're saying over there on MSNBC. And we flip over and we spend 30 seconds saying, oh yeah, that guy's nuts. And we flip back. We're in these bubbles. Here's a fancy another vocabulary lesson. It's sometimes called epistemic closure. The things we think about are closed. Our minds are closed. We have to make the effort to get off. We have to get out. We have to find new ways. We have to get off of our telephones. Not necessarily, not all the time. I got mine right here. It's supposed to show a clock. Oh, it does. Good. Not too late yet. But we can make an effort. The chairman of the board, Archer Fryerson's here. He's a Washington Lee grad, Washington Lee guy. Washington Lee has a tradition on their campus called the speaking tradition. Is that right, Mr. Chairman? Speaking tradition. It's very simple. It's just an expectation that as you pass people on the sidewalk, you speak to them. Wow, what a radical idea. We're not buried in our telephones. We're actually seeing, acknowledging the existence of the people we pass. It's hard. We've become so polarized, and we've begun to pull apart people's, or actually in some ways mush together, people's identity and their ideas. I'm sad to report that a survey at my undergraduate alma mater, the University of North Carolina, shows that what they call, I think it's called affective isolation, I'm forgetting the label, but this phenomenon of attaching personal values to people based on their identities. If you disagree with me, you're not just mistaken, you're evil or stupid. We have to get away from it. We must, and in higher education, we have a particular need to do this. We have to acknowledge, and I'm speaking now just as much to the faculty, maybe even more as the students, we have to acknowledge there's a tension between free expression, which we certainly need, but maintaining an inclusive and respectful learning environment for everybody. We have to do those things together, and they sometimes don't go together. Unpopular opinions are unpopular. Permissible speech, things that can be said, we know can make some people feel excluded, isolated, hurt. We have to figure out how to create that genuine inclusiveness, but also a freedom for inquiry. On our side of the aisle, introducing students to a wide range of perspectives while giving them the tools to listen carefully and to distinguish between stronger and weaker arguments is the heart of teaching. And it's also essential preparation for the rigors of citizenship in our diverse society. Finally, I guess I may have said this is a warning. That's not really true, but finally, anyway. Let me be clear, I understand this is a perilous time. We are divided. We have deeply held opinions. We have wars. We have conflict in the Middle East that goes back in some form or another for centuries. We're wrestling with those deep conflicts. But here I want to focus specifically, you may have heard, maybe not, we have an election coming up. Very close election, very deep divisions. You know, a couple of weeks from now is Constitution Day, September the 13th? 12th. So, thanks. Yeah, political scientists, we always have to do Constitution. So, when you get you may get a little pocket Constitution, but if not, we can find you one. If you read the Constitution, guess what? There's no mention of political parties in the Constitution. They're alluded to a little bit in some of the later amendments. As you know, if you've seen Hamilton, the founders didn't like the idea of political parties. Washington was very opposed to political parties, and yet they sprung up within his own cabinet. They started instantaneously because there are reasonable differences about how to get to a common goal. In the end, we all, except for really bonkers people on each end of the spectrum, we all want what's best for the country. We might disagree strongly about what counts as best and how we get there, but reasonable people can disagree and reason through this together. Whether it's what's good for the country, what's good for Centenary, but especially in this time of election, I plead with you to, as you engage in political debate, which is important, and I encourage you to do that, do it in ways that are respectful. Take seriously what we've talked about. This is my request. Take seriously what we've talked about today. Commit to showing our community what it means to have reasoned civil discourse. The rules are easy. Dr. Soul already referenced a couple of them, and you can find them in any kind of quick Google list. Active listening. Listen attentively to others, even if you disagree. Practice empathetic communication. Try to actually understand each other's perspectives. Seek common ground. Look for areas of agreement, even in the midst of disagreement. And avoid ad hominem attacks. Focus on the argument, not the person. Do it reasonably. Screaming at each other is not civil discourse and doesn't help anything. This is what we have to do. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, was a great believer in reason. He's one of what's sometimes referred to as the Wesleyan quadrilateral. He was a man of the Enlightenment. He expected us to use our minds as we thought about our place in the world and our relationship to God, and he took this idea head on. What do we do when we disagree? And Wesley, in essence, said, well, let's think about what we're disagreeing about. If we're disagreeing about what God wants for us, that's a different kind of thing. But if we're disagreeing about other things, let's see if we can step away from the keyboard, he would have said today. John Wesley wrote, "We believe Christ to be the eternal supreme God, and herein we are distinguished, blah, blah, blah. But as to all opinions which do not strike at the root of Christianity, we think and let think. Think and let think." And later on he says, "Though we cannot think alike, may we not love alike? May we not be of one heart, though we are not of one opinion? Without all doubt, we may. Without all doubt, we may. Herein all the children of God may unite, notwithstanding these smaller differences." By our heritage, we are called to reason. I just met, a couple of weeks ago, I met the head of school for the oldest Methodist school in the world, founded by John Wesley in Bristol, England. I mean, he wasn't there, we met someplace else. But we have this long tradition of education. That's why there's so many Methodist colleges and universities. Football team, you all are playing a Methodist college on the 7th, Hendricks. So go get them, beat them. We're committed to reason, but we're committed to respect. We're committed to not letting differences divide us. We have an amazing year coming up. The bicentennial, all the celebrations. Let's commit together to make Centenary an even better third place for its third century. Forward, Centenary.
Will you please stand for the benediction? And remain standing after the benediction to join in the alma mater, and then stay in place for the recessional. Hear these words. My friends, go forward, lean into those liminal places. Be kind, be curious, find your joy, and more than ever, go in peace.